Muy buenos días a todos. Muchas gracias por acudir a esta conferencia, a esta charla. Hoy tenemos a dos invitadas muy especiales y la charla, como ustedes saben, va a ser en inglés. Posteriormente la vamos a subir en YouTube. Al final de su plática va a haber una sesión de preguntas y respuestas para que puedan participar. Antes de esta sección de preguntas y respuestas, les agradeceríamos tener su micrófono y cámara apagadas para una mejor fluidez de la conferencia. Y cuando tengan una pregunta o quieran charlar, pueden con toda confianza abrir su micrófono, levantar la mano para que les abramos su micrófono y puedan hacer las preguntas que ustedes deseen con nuestras invitadas de hoy, a quienes comenzaré a dar la bienvenida. Good morning. Thank you all for attending Perspectives on Isolation from Simulated Martians. I talked with Dr. Martha Lenio and Master of Engineering, Sophie Milam. Dr. Martha Lenio was a High Seas 3 mission commander, and currently she is an Arctic renewable energy specialist for WWF Canada and lead solar consultant at Mars Green Consulting. She did a Bachelor of Applied Science in Mechanical Engineering at the University of Waterloo in Canada and a PhD in Photovoltaic Engineering at the University of New South Wales in Australia. Master in Engineering, Sophie Milam was a High Seas 3 Mission Executive Officer, and currently she is a Mechanical Engineer for First Ice UAV Support System. She did a Bachelor of Science and Bachelor of Arts in Astronomy and Physics at the University of Hawaii at Hilo, and a Master of Engineering in Mechanical Engineering at the University of Idaho in the USA. Doctors Martha and Sophie, welcome. The University of Celaya is honored to welcome you back, now virtually, to listen to your insights and experiences during your time in isolation as members of the High Seas 3 crew funded by NASA. The mission of the University of Celaya as a private non-profit institution is to contribute to the improvement of today's world through the development of intellectual capacity, formation in values and entrepreneurial vision of our students, so that they assume their responsibility and leadership as global citizens in search of the common good. And we know that you are global leaders who will give you very interesting insights and perspectives during this time of lockdown and also afterwards. So thank you again for accepting the invitation and for being here. Welcome. This is, as we said, this is your house, and we will all be listening to you attentively. Thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you, Anna.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. So I have a bit of a presentation I can share, maybe for 10 minutes. And then I think we'll go to Q&A for like the rest, because I'm sure lots of you will have lots of questions. So I'm gonna share my screen here. All right, so yes, thank you for the wonderful introduction, Anna. Sophie and I had the really unique experience of participating in an 8-month Mars simulation on Mauna Loa in Hawaii. It was funded by NASA and run by the University of Hawaii. So this is just going to be a brief overview, mission objectives, you know, why did NASA pay to lock us up in a dome for 8 months? And then what's it like to live on Mars or fake Mars, and some of the lessons that we learned. And then, yeah, we'll open it up for questions. So the mission objective, long story short, NASA wants to learn how you pick a team and then support a team for these long duration, isolated space missions so that the crew won't go crazy and kill each other. So that's from Dr. Kim Binstead, the principal investigator from the High Seas Project. And since a large part of the project is about crew selection and support, they did put a lot of effort into how they chose us. So it started with, like, you know, a written application. You put in your resume, a research proposal like you would for a regular job interview. And then there is an online aptitude test and personality testing, asking you, like, you know, math and logic questions, but also, you know, what kind of personality traits do you think make up a good leader in this kind of conflict situation? What would you do? Then there was a Skype interview and a group Skype interview, and they whittled it down from about 700 applicants down to a final like 8 or 9 of us, and they took us on a 6-day backpacking trip in Wyoming with the National Outdoor Leadership School. And after observing us, you know, on this 6-day backpacking trip, they did the final crew selection, you know, based on how we all gelled as a team. So you can just see some photos from the course there. And as I said, they are studying like how you pick a crew and support a troop for these long duration missions. And one thing that they do see in long duration missions is something called like the third quarter phenomena. Whether it's a space mission or a submarine mission or a mission in Antarctica, when you have these really long isolated missions, you know, you start out kind of happy, as you can kind of see in this graph. You know, you're doing something super new and exciting, everything's shiny, you're going to be doing this really cool work in a really cool place. And then around like the halfway point, things are kind of like blah. You've been doing the same routine over and over again. You haven't seen anyone new or gone anywhere new. And you kind of get into a funk in the third quarter. And then you can kind of see the end is in sight in the last quarter, and people's moods start to change again. So it's kind of like the third quarter phenomena that Bechtel has kind of identified. And then there's another model called the heightened alertness, depression, volatility, where you see maybe, again, it starts out kind of the same. People are super happy, getting a funk in the middle. But then at the end, instead of just kind of everyone's mood going up again, it's kind of a period of high volatility where, you know, you are happy and excited, but it's really stressful because there's a lot of work to get done before the end of the mission. And people's priorities are shifting. So it can actually also be a period of high conflict. So those are the kind of things that they were looking for. And it's not unusual, you know, they're not expecting us not to have this, but they're like, okay, how do we detect when this is happening? And how do we support the crew so that they can get through to the end of the mission successfully? They did a whole bunch of they had 6 different research groups studying us. Long story short, there was a lot of surveys and we wore some monitors on our body to measure how close, like, you know, we were to each other and whether our volume levels were, you know, if we were yelling or something. And then some like cognitive testing. You can see kind of like the quizzes that we get every other week in the bottom there. So like these are kind of like the ways that they were trying to figure out whether we were in a good mood or bad mood or in conflict or working together well still. But the other half is they had to make us feel like we lived on Mars. So these 2 photos, one is from Mars and one is from where we were on Earth. So I'll just, usually I have people give a show of hands, but I'll just let you look at them and think about it in your head and guess which one is Mars and which one is Earth. Earth and Mars. So, yeah, they do look similar though. It's like this red, rocky Martian landscape, and that's where they put us. So when you looked out the window of the dome, it looked like Mars. You felt like you were on Mars. This is the indoor kind of fisheye view of the dome. So you can see, you know, our living quarters on the top are very small bedrooms that were kind of like pie wedges, glorified closets in a way, and a very multifunctional, yeah, Sophie agrees.
Very much so.
Multifunctional, yeah, workspace. So you could see like we would be on the right are our desks, and this open space would be like our work area / workout area / movie viewing area / you know, eating area. We were entirely off-grid on solar power, as you would be like on Mars. Solar with battery backup, with backup hydrogen fuel cells, and a backup generator in case it was needed. Anytime you went outside, you had to be wearing a spacesuit to protect you from the environment. All our food was dehydrated, shelf stable. It had to last for 3 years, as a mission to Mars would. Unlike in our current lockdown, we did not have the internet, so we were not able to communicate with the outside world. Like, oh, this is the screen that we would get if we tried to access the internet. We have, again, very close workspaces, so we would normally be, you know, 6 of us shoulder to shoulder working at our desks if we were all there at the same time. And then there were always like, this is just like an example of like one of the stressful situations that came up over the course of the mission. So we had one week of very poor weather. We didn't have enough sun to charge the batteries from the solar system. We started running low on gasoline and hydrogen. So we put in a lot of mitigation methods. We were not cooking properly, mostly just eating like Cliff Bars and dried fruit and stuff like that. If we were making like hot water for tea or something, we would do it for the whole group, and then everyone would get their tea or soup or something at the same time. We turned down the heat. We reduced our experiments. We reduced the lighting. We were doing low energy entertainment and workouts. So we really had to cut a lot of our work down. And then we kind of hit a critical failure in that we started having a generator malfunction. So we had to identify our critical systems which we decided as a group were our composting toilets, which if they lost power would get very stinky very fast. Our lab freezer, which was holding our biological samples that we'd collected during the mission. We collected a lot of, for people doing stress experiments on this, we collected a lot of hair samples, urine samples, and feces samples that were all frozen for analysis at the end. So we were like, okay, we can't lose people's data. Yeah. The communications was critical so that we could communicate with our mission support, and blast off McRocket boots, which was our, we had a hydroponics set up with a little beta fish, so we wanted blast off to be okay. So we kind of put all that in place, and you can see here it's very dark inside the dome, but hopefully you can also see there, that's a picture of Sophie and Neil reporting back from an EVA to check on the generator, and Sophie is doing shadow puppets. So what was really critical was maintaining a good sense of humor and a good level of teamwork. And the other, I guess, just touch on some of the other challenges. That was like, a physical challenge, and we all rose to the challenge together. One that was kind of interesting to me was sort of like conflict resolution and how that changed over the course of the mission. So at the start, when we first went into the dome, a lot of the conflict was maybe around like housework and not having set up our cleaning schedule properly. Like, so we hadn't put like cleaning the floors on the chores schedule, and one person had been doing it all the time, and got tired of doing that for the crew. So there was some conflict around those things, but we set it up so that every like Sunday over like tea and scones, we'd have a chat about how the week went and kind of resolve those sort of issues. So after the first month or so, we stopped having those kind of issues. And then we had like 5 months where there was very little conflict. And then towards the end of the mission, the last 6 weeks, with people shifting priorities, we started to see a lot of conflicts arise again. So it was that was one really interesting thing to observe over the course of the mission. But some of the best parts in the end, one of the things I was really worried about going in the dome, I don't know, Sophie, if you were too, but I was really worried about getting out of shape, just being in this confined space for 8 months. I'm really usually very physical, going outside for runs and camping and hiking and stuff. But we started doing P90X on like the second day in the dome, and ended up working out every single day for 8 months, and I was in the best shape of my entire life. So for the first time in my life, I was able to do a pull-up. It was the day that I could do that was super exciting. I remember giving Sophie high fives.
Yeah, Martha and I we were definitely on some similar levels, and I think she got the first pull-up in, and I was maybe a week or two behind, but it was nice. We were able to push each other, and at the same time really kind of support each other and encourage each other to keep going. And it was very different having a lot of different personalities in there. The whole crew didn't always get together for workouts, but we tried to get everyone in at least once or twice a week. So it was definitely about learning what your priorities were, and then trying to also make a good group decision for the group in general with regards to health. Mm-hmm.
And I'd say that the physical workouts are one of the really important things for maintaining your mental stability in the dome. So supporting each other in accomplishing that in whatever way, whether it's yoga or whether it's going for a run on the treadmill mill, and just making space for people to be able to do that was really important. The food was also surprisingly amazing. Again, this was one of the things that I was really worried about going in, because as you saw, we had this really, shelf stable food set ingredients that we were going to be stuck with for 8 months. So I was worried it would get really boring. But luckily our crew is somewhat competitive and everyone wanted to be the best chef. So we ended up having really fantastic meals. And I showed a few here, like we had a burger night that took Zach, I think 18 hours to do, because you have to make everything from scratch. He made the buns from scratch. And it had to do gluten and gluten-free because Sophie's celiac. So yeah. And he made the beans and the tater tots, and I think for the burger he had to put the freeze-dried meat in a blender, powderize it, then reconstitute it with some egg, and then fry it. Anyway, it was so amazing, and we had leftovers, and it made me smile every single time I bit into it. So yeah, that was one of the highlights for me. But.
Food actually was really important, and it was also kind of a neat way to share the different places we've been. So Martha shared a lot about the different cultures that she's been involved with. So she made us Ghanaian food, Ghanaian.
Mm-hmm. Ghanaian, yeah.
And then also we had some kind of as authentic as we could get Australian dishes for Australia Day, and we tried making hot pot. Or what was it for Chinese New Year? But we actually tried to celebrate a lot of different days, just kind of making as much special as we could. So it was neat being able to see Martha share the cultures that she's been involved with. Alan is Azerbaijani, so we got some neat food from him, and really everyone just had a lot of really interesting dishes. I think Zach even made banh mi, or bao. Mm-hmm. He made bao, and that was incredible because it's a very work-intensive dish. And it was good competition. We all tried to kind of one-up each other, but in a nice, healthy, competitive way.
Yeah, I think, and Sophie brought this up at one of the other talks I think we did, that you don't have a lot of options for going out and seeing new people, or giving each other gifts and putting a lot of effort into your food. It's one of the ways that you could show the people around you that you care and you want to do something nice for them. So it was I guess one of those creative and supportive outlets that we had. I think that NASA did a pretty good job, and HiSEA did a pretty good job in choosing the crew. So definitely the crew was one of the best parts. As you can see, we were in there for a lot of different holidays. So on the left, that was our Halloween celebration. On the right, that's Zach and Jocelyn preparing to clean out composting toilets. And I think people approached a lot of these challenges with a good sense of humor, and that's really, really critical, that you don't, because cleaning out the composting toilets is not fun. Sophie, as my executive officer, had to do it with me probably more than anyone else as we learned how to do it. But yeah, everyone really tried to make light of it, and no one really complained or backed out, so it was good. The geology tasks were something I found really fun, just trying to learning a new skill in a field that I'd never worked in before. So that was a highlight for me, going out in the spacesuit, getting suited up, going outside and exploring. And for me, living off renewable energy was a really big highlight because, as you heard, I'm a solar engineer. So the chance to live off grid entirely on renewable energy and just share with the crew how easy it is, actually. We had to shift a lot of our cooking to the middle of the afternoon. So typically, whoever was making dinner that night would probably start cooking at around 1 or 2 in the afternoon to take advantage of the sun. And then we do our workouts around 4 or 5, and then get back together and just reheat dinner, and then have dinner as a family together. But for me, just to show people, with some little modifications, it's actually really quite easy to live on renewables. Just really, really cool for me.
Yeah, I had no previous experience living off grid at all. So this was something where it was really neat to figure out kind of what the weak points in our system were and figure out how you can make your schedule work around that so that you're taking advantage of times when you have surplus, and then you're also really trying to kind of hold back when you know that there's not a lot of power. So we tried to do a lot of stuff together as a group in the evenings because it was less power hungry than everyone kind of doing their own thing and having their own computer going, their own speakers going. It was easier for us to just get together and all watch a movie together. And it was nice because we had that time together, and then we could all kind of go off and do our own thing afterwards. But for the most part, it was really great just trying to figure out how to optimize that relationship versus power consumption. It was a neat engineering and maybe sociological problem.
Yeah, so yeah, what we learned is kind of like, you know, picking a crew, it takes all types. You don't want everyone to be, you know, super outgoing, or else you'd all be bouncing off each other and probably creating conflict. And you don't want everyone to be super introverted, because then everyone would probably hang out in their rooms watching a season of like Archer or something by themselves, and it would be very isolating and quiet. So it does take all types. There's no really wrong type of personality. It was important to maintain a work-life balance, just to shut off and have fun with each other and not work for a while to kind of reset. Compromise, tolerance, and a sense of humor will get you really far. And hopefully, you know, NASA learned a lot about what makes up a successful and productive group. And I learned a lot about how far off we are from being truly sustainable still. Like, the energy was the easy thing. We still generated a lot of waste on our mission. So that was actually really interesting to see. But yeah, thank you guys. That was all I had to share in terms of the presentation. And I just want to open it up for questions, because I'm sure you guys have questions. So hopefully that was a good overview and answered a few of them. But we're happy to answer lots more.
Thank you very much. Yes, we can have a few questions if some of you want to raise your hand, or so we can make a line of questions. I remember, Alexandra, you have one question, right? Or anyone else who wants to ask a question? Alexandra, are you there? Okay, hello.
Yes, I kind of have two questions. First question is divided. How's the day inside the dome? Do you have any defined routines, or they change? And most important, do you choose your own routine, or some other people choose it for you? And during hope, how can you keep a mental health?
I guess I can kind of start. I think, and Sophie, you can chime in and say whether you agree or not. But I was kind of, I think, maybe more of a hands-off leader, in that I kind of let people, for the most part, make up their own schedules. So for me, I would usually get up around 7:30 or so, check email. We would usually, if we were going to go outside on an EVA, we would do that in the morning generally, just because the weather was better. And then in the afternoons, I feel like we did more of, like, if there was like a NASA experiment or something that we had to do, like some team performance challenge, or one of these things where they were measuring how we did as a team. And then, or people would be working on their own research. And then, yeah, we do a group workout around 4:30, and dinner. And then in the evening, we'd do maybe some kind of board game or movie night. So I don't know, Sophie, how was it for you? Like,
again, I think that Martha did a really great job as commander. She was definitely hands-off when she needed to be. Which was good because it made the rest of us feel like we had autonomy to do what we wanted. But we did also have a schedule, especially of different research projects that we needed to be a part of. So we did our best to make sure that none of those were at really inconvenient times for anyone. Most of our experiments that we had to do, we made sure we did kind of early afternoon. And my schedule was pretty much what it is normally, just, you know, I didn't have to commute anywhere. So it's a lot like it is now. But I would get up around 9 o'clock in the morning. If I got up earlier, Martha and I might grab a game of Scrabble or something while we had tea. But yeah, then work for the morning, do my own projects, have lunch normally with a couple other members of the crew, and then back to work for another couple hours until workout time. And if it was my day to cook, and I think this is true of most people, if it was your day to cook, you normally just, after lunch, you just started preparing for dinner because it took a lot of time. And again, we all wanted to make something really nice. But I will say that there was definitely a lot of different schedules on the team. So my day was pretty normal in terms of like 9 to 5 work and then kind of dinner and normal after dinner things. But by the end of I would say by about halfway through, one of our crew members would wake up around noon and have kind of lunch breakfast with us. And then she would basically just start her day, you know, that much later. And so she would work late at night because it was better for her to be avoiding all of the noise and the, you know, people asking questions and things like that. And it was helpful to her so that she could actually focus on what she was doing without anyone being around. And she could do all that quietly from her own space. So she just had that little extra bit of removal from us. And so that was kind of neat. I would say maybe there was a little bit less seeing her in the evenings because that was her work time. But for the most part, I mean, it really worked out well for her. And I think she completed most of her PhD stuff while she was in the dome. So kind of everyone had their own different way of doing things. And I think one of the things that we established early on was what to do when someone thought that they were going a little bit too far in the introvert direction. Because normally this is the kind of thing that you understand after years of knowing a person, like knowing a friend, you know when they're upset, but you also know how to get them out of a funk. So we had to kind of learn that within like a week of going in. So we had a lot of questions before we even got into the dome about, you know, what does it look like when you're sad versus what does it look like when you're depressed? What does it look like when you just need personal time versus, you know, if you need us to pull you out of something. So for me, for example, I told them that if something bad happened, I would probably want to be alone for 2 to 3 days. And anything after that was going to be not useful for me, and it was just going to make me spin my wheels in my own head. So after that amount of time, I would appreciate someone coming in and trying to cheer me up and trying to get me out into the world again, or at least our little dome of a world.
Yeah, and that was definitely one of the challenging things, was to be enough, you know, you need a crew that's very self-aware of how your actions impact everyone around you, and then to be able to read people well enough, to see whether, you know, this is like kind of like a normal I need space, or if they're really struggling with depression. So like for me, one of the things, like about halfway through the mission, like earlier than everyone else, one of the crew members did get very depressed, but as he was one of the more introverted people, it was very hard to read. But I noticed like his schedule, his normal schedule from the mission so far, it started to change, and he started spending a lot more time in his room and not interacting with people. So I did actually get quite worried about him. And one of the things that kind of like, and it's hard to know whether you're annoying someone or not too sometimes. With him, he was very hard to read. But one of the things that did help pull him through, and he did get over it and was fine again by the end of before the end of the mission, but was maintaining the workouts. So I do remember like one day where it was very unusual for him not to work out, but he didn't. And then at the end of the day, he came up to me and asked if I wanted to do some yoga with him. And I was like, yeah, sure. Like, if whatever you want, I will do for you, because you made the effort to ask. It doesn't matter how many workouts I do in a day. Like, I'll do whatever you need right now. So, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
We've got a chat. You're welcome. Hopefully that helps. We've got a question from Miguel in the chat. What are your recommendations? What would you recommend for, what would your recommendation be for us as untrained persons to deal with the lockdown? I mean, in the family, there are no experiments or exciting stuff to achieve. Do you have to create them, or, you know, I guess, yeah, what would you recommend? So, do you want to go, Sophie?
Yeah, sure. So this is my personal situation right now is I do go into work. I have 2 coworkers, and right now one of them is staying home, and we all have the option to stay home. So that's nice. I do that maybe half the time. So next week I'll be working from home. But one of the things that I've found is just trying to stay busy and trying to take up some new hobbies. And I've found that it's kind of difficult for me at home to really focus with the same intensity on work that I have while I'm at work. So I've been trying to just maintain a better schedule and really think about things before I try to do them. So I don't try to work, 8 a.m. to noon. Instead, I'll make a goal of working for an hour, and then I will take my dog outside and play ball, or I'll go work in the garden for a little bit. And I try to keep those under about 15 minutes. Some of the new skills that I've learned are I'm trying to become a better 3D printer. And I've also taken up sewing, just something to keep my mind busy and also keep my hands busy, something physical. And I think that it's nice because it lets you kind of really take yourself out of your normal environment and just try something different. That being said, I don't have children or family that's with me during the day every day while I'm at home. So my situation is a little bit easier going, and I really only have to answer to myself. One of the things I would suggest is just making sure that you have really open and honest communication. If you are, stuck with someone in the same place for a long period of time, just recognizing that any problems that they have are going to be accentuated by the fact that you're isolated together. One of the things we found out early is that normally the first course of action when there's a conflict is that people like to remove themselves. And when you are confined, you no longer get that first option. So just recognizing that maybe your partner or your kid or something will come up and just say, look, I'm mad, I need space. And then you have to give it to them, and you have to wait for them to come back to you. So that was one of the things in the dome that was the most important. Anytime that someone expressed an emotion or a need, the group was really great about getting behind that and really trying to accommodate them so that they could have whatever psychological space they needed, since we couldn't have physical space.
My other recommendation would just be your physical and your mental health are super closely tied. So it's important, and it's a strange situation, right? The lockdown, because you can't go out. It depends on where you are, but you might not be able to go outside and go for a run. You might not be able to go outside and if you're used to playing soccer, or I don't know, going and like camping or something. Like there's and all the parks are closed, so it's a challenging time. And I think you're just going to have to be open to trying a lot of different things that maybe you never were, had thought of before. And just open yourself up to that. So like I was talking with my friend who lives in Timmins, Ontario, which is, it's pretty remote, so you can go outside fairly easily. But she's struggling this week actually because for the weird reason that it's spring and the bears have come out of hibernation. So she's used to going for nice long forest walks with her dog to, it's nice and isolated, but she's like, we can't go out anymore because all the bears are hungry and there's just bears everywhere. So she's really been struggling to like figure out how do I can't go outside anymore. It's too dangerous. So just finding out what you can do, whether it's, even if it's just like yoga, just like setting a really low bar and trying to maintain some physical activity outlet. And I think it's hard to force yourself to do it. Before I went into the dome, like I'm not a gym person. I hate going to the gym. I never really done workout videos, but after 8 months in the dome, I kind of grew to like them. So I guess just, be open to new experiences. It's a challenging situation, and I guess, just don't write anything off. even like whatever, even mindful, I still kind of like, I'm like, I don't know, I'm not a mindfulness kind of person, but if, just be open to trying out weird and different things, and maybe something will click. You never know, could be good.
Oh, and open your windows. Fresh air and sunshine. I think those were one of the things that we missed most in the dome, because we didn't really get any fresh air or any sunshine. And I think that was one of my most vivid memories, was coming out of the dome and being like, the sun, oh my gosh. So
it was amazing.
it really was a transformative moment.
Yeah, are there other questions? Feel free to type it, or I don't know.
I think Jorge Mauricio, he had one question. Anyone who would like to ask a question, you can unmute yourself and turn on your camera, and so you can ask all of your questions.
Alexandra, I'm going to assume that the clapping hands is a hand. I'm not sure. I'm not very good at
thank you.
this.
Teacher,
Yeah.
we're being silenced by the host. George, want to?
You can unmute yourself.
No, we can't.
Okay.
When we
choose
unmute.
Okay.
Okay, already. You are all on mute.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question. Did you discover about yourself during task mission?
Can you repeat the question, Mauricio, please?
Okay. Did you discover anything new about yourself during task mission?
I think we all discovered a lot about ourselves. So personally, I found that I was a bit more introverted than I thought. So I thought that being in isolation and confinement would be, I thought that it would be really lonely, but it was actually exactly the opposite. It was probably the most social I have ever been, because you're constantly around people. And I think that that's one of the things that is similar about this. You're constantly around people, but after a while it's the same group of people. You know a lot about them and a lot about their mannerisms. So it's an odd social feeling, but at the same time you're in this little bubble. So it was interesting for me because I thought that I would handle the small groups a little bit better, but it turns out that I need a lot more of my own personal space, and I hadn't really realized how much until I got into the dome. So one of the things that we tried to do was, if someone needed to have a private conversation, so if I needed to talk to Martha about something, or I needed to talk to our doctor about something, everyone else was really good at putting on headphones and listening to music or something like that. Because, since we were in such a small area, it was really easy to overhear anything, everything. So it was nice that all of my crewmates would kind of participate in giving me the illusion of privacy, so that I could have a one-on-one conversation and really feel like it was staying between me and the person I was trying to talk to. But I definitely realized that I need a lot more of my own time, just personally, to really have some good mental health on my end. Yeah, I think that was probably the biggest thing for me, trying to balance that out while not feeling selfish and antisocial. Because again, all of your moods really impact the people around you. And so, for example, a family friend of mine passed away while we were inside the dome, and so that was really hard for me. And it was hard because I wanted to be sad, and at the same time I also didn't want to be sad and didn't want to bring down the mood of all of my crew members. So it was nice having people come up and just letting me know that if I needed to, I could go and be sad, and that it was fine, and that they felt for me, but that they weren't, it wasn't ruining their day, me having to deal with something hard. So I know that it sounds really kind of obvious, but it's actually really nice when someone comes up and just kind of gives you that permission to have a little bit of sadness, and let you know that while they feel for you, it's not going to make their day bad, because I think a lot of us tend to project that onto people. So it was nice just knowing that, you know, I was supported and I was loved, but at the same time, my horribleness didn't really translate to other people. What do you think, Martha?
Yeah, no, I think it's super interesting. Like I think every single person in the dome learned something different about themselves. I mean, definitely everyone here is going to learn something different about themselves by going through this COVID-19 experience. Like it's definitely going to show you, it pushes you out of your comfort zone, whether you like it or not. And you are going to learn differently about your limits and what you need to be, you know, happy and successful as a person, or what the needs of the people around you are. And that's a good thing when you can learn that. Some people never can quite learn about themselves. So just learning about yourself is a huge thing, and getting to know yourself better. For me, I guess I didn't feel like I learned too much different, because I've pushed myself into a lot of strange situations before, whether like, you know, moving to Ghana and being a volunteer, or to Australia, or being in remote locations. But like for me, one of like I come from like a large family, and for me, being in this confined space with a lot of people wasn't too big a deal, in that, but because like I never even had my own room until I was in university. So I was I'm not used to a lot of privacy, and I am used to taking a care of a lot of young, you know, my younger siblings, and babysitting and all that. But I did learn, I guess one of the cool things was from actually the Knowles leadership course, and I had never considered myself a leader really before. And so it was really interesting to, I guess, do that course and learn that there's different types of leaders. It's okay to lead from behind and to be hands off, and that sometimes in these really confined situations, that's actually what you need. Like if you'd been a nitpicker or like micromanager, like it would have been a nightmare in this kind of a situation. So for me, I was like, oh, I do have a valid leadership style, and in this kind of a situation, maybe that's the one that's kind of appropriate. So it made me more comfortable in being a leader, I guess, and I guess recognize that I was one, when I hadn't maybe done that before. So yeah. Omar, you had like a hand up, so I'm going to unmute you in case you have a question. I can't do it anymore.
I think he was given the thumbs up.
Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep. Yeah.
My question is, how do you ration the food within all the lockdown?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, how do you ration the food within all the lockdown?
So we were in the dome for 8 months, and we had resupplies every 2 months. So we would get a resupply of some of the more perishable foods. And the idea behind that was that you could do this on a real Mars mission by having unmanned probes kind of constantly sending out additional supplies that you might run out of, more consumable type things. So we started off with a lot of food. Most of the freeze-dried food that we had, I mean, we had enough of each of them for, gosh, maybe a mission twice as long as ours. We didn't get through everything that we started off with. And then on top of that, we had our resupplies where we could request just things that were, like I said, more perishable. So I think we got tortillas, different kinds of tortillas, I think bacon.
Yeah, I think like that's kind of one of the things that NASA is trying to figure out is like, you know, what kinds of food and how often they have to resupply it. And I think every crew is slightly different. Like, so for us, like, I think we went through a ton of rice, partly because Sophie's celiac. So I think we went through a ton of more rice, and we had a whole bunch of pasta left over because we just didn't eat pasta because we couldn't do it as a crew. So I think like that was something that, and I think for like a future Mars mission, they would probably just put people in isolation for a few months to see how they eat and what their preferences are. And like, they'd have to get a feel for that before they send them to Mars, to make sure that they're sending the right stuff. And also on that, I think different crews did it differently. So we were pretty, again, like, I'm not super hands-on, like, we were pretty creative with our food. I didn't, say this is how much we have at this time or something. But I know other crews, they really did go through all the food at the start, and they made like, this is the bin for May, this is the bin for June, this is the bin. And I know on a previous mission, there was something called the Nutella Incident, where someone finished off on the very last day of the month, someone finished off the jar of Nutella because they knew there was going to be one open the next day, and that actually really set off a lot of conflict on the crew. So the Nutella incident. So it's best not to, I don't know, like, if you're going to be rationing food, make sure everyone's on the same page. Maybe if you're going to finish off the jar of Nutella, ask if anyone else would like some first and share it. I don't know. Don't unilaterally decide what to do with your food.
I think we all got to pick a couple things that we really wanted in there. So like, for example, Martha made bread, like 2 or 3 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, so Sophie couldn't eat it, but it made Alan so happy. So I was like, if all I have to do to make Alan happy is make him bread a couple times a week, like, this is amazing. He's the easiest one.
Yeah, and it was great because honestly, since I can't eat it, I don't really have a craving for it. So it wasn't like I felt like I was missing out. It was just normal life for me. But yeah, some people on the crew, it meant a whole lot. So I know that I think we had a lot more flour kind of in there in our resupplies maybe. But we inherited all of the shelf stable food from the missions before us. So, it's not like our pantry was really customized to us. We kind of had a lot of stuff that was maybe a little bit more random. Like, I think we had a bunch of like fruit roll-ups or something, like fruit by the foot or something weird like that none of us really cared about, but it was some other previous crew members, snack of choice. So there were a couple things like that, but for the most part, we didn't really have to ration our food. Although we did do a couple outreach activities with people, trying to get different recipes from people outside of the dome who wanted us to try stuff with shelf-stable food. And we actually did end up making our own cookbook, using our shelf-stable food recipes kind of combined with the recipes we would normally do outside of the dome. So unfortunately, not a lot of rationing. And I know that that's been something during the lockdown that has been very interesting to have to start doing, since, you're buying for yourself and you're buying for your family. So unfortunately, I don't think we can be a lot of help in that particular regard. But just making sure that you have lots of variety.
One thing that was really nice is, like, my project in the dome was the indoor gardening project, and having like once a month having a proper salad or tomatoes that we grew ourselves was amazing. So if one thing I would recommend too, which helps you get outside and experience nature and take care of something, would be if you have the space, or if you have like a little ledge in your home or a little bit of a balcony or something, to try doing some container gardening, even if it's just like some herbs or something. Like, it was really, really well appreciated by the crew. And it was a nice place to hang out too. Like, people enjoyed just hanging out by the greenery.
Yeah, it was really nice. She put a bunch of lettuce around one of our arches by our lock, and it was kind of the favorite place people would drag a chair over, because there was kind of light coming down, and then all these little pots full of lettuce, and it was really good. And there's a lot of easy container gardening you can do, and there's a lot of psychological studies showing that taking care of a plant or a fish, something that's really low key, it does have a really nice impact on your psychology, and it helps you feel a little bit more in control and a little bit more like you're able to give something that's special, basically. But good question. Anyone else?
Have more
We've got time for another. So I have kind of a question for you guys then, and this might be kind of an interesting way of doing it, but if someone has a desire to answer it, do you guys think that the hardest part about being in the lockdown has been the people that you're isolated with, or do you think it's been the fact that you've had to miss out on things that you normally do, like going to a bar or going to a park or something like that? Does anyone have an opinion on that? And this is mostly, I'm curious, like I missed out on, going outside.
I think you can write it in the chat too if you're having trouble putting your hand up.
You could also unmute yourselves if you want to answer Sophie's question.
I have another question.
Yep, go ahead.
Who was the entire process from the beginning to enter this program? As it was from the first moment you proposed it?
Might need to repeat that one.
Who was the entire process from the enter this program as it was from the first moment?
Who?
I think he means how was the process of entering to this mission? How was the process since you were proposed to, and how do you decided to say yes, I'm gonna do it?
For me, like how I found out about the project, actually it was one of my friends from undergrad. I'd been working in solar for a long time and was thinking of trying to get back into aerospace, and around the same time she just shared the opportunity on Facebook, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll maybe this is the way I get back into aerospace. So I didn't other than like my random friend who was kind of promoting it, I didn't know any of the people or like running the program. I just kind of like cold decided I would do that and submitted an application. On like the very last day, I spent my whole day at work like creating a research proposal and then sending it in just before the deadline. And then from there, it's a selection process. It's a competitive selection process where they, do the aptitude test and you do interviews and things like that, right? So I didn't know anyone in the project before that, and I wasn't really asked. I just went out and applied. How was it for you, Sophie?
So I was actually applying for FMARS, and I asked my old teacher whether or not, my old teacher from Hawaii, my university there, if he would give me a letter of recommendation, and I told him about the project, and he was like, oh, you should do this thing that's here instead. And so I also applied to that. And yeah, the psychology test was like 3 hours long of questions. It was crazy. Like lots of weird multiple choice questions. That was kind of what I remember most about it. Just weird situations that you put in and they're like, how would you respond? So that was it. And then yeah, the hiking trip was really, I think, where they got all they needed to know about us.
Miguel Bravo answered your question, Sophie, in the chat. Okay, already.
Yeah, so most of it has to do with dealing with the same people. Yep. Going out, seeing your friends, going to work would give you fresh air. It's harder to do in lockdown. Yeah, so limiting your group of friends and limiting the people you get to interact with, personally, physically is definitely a hard thing to deal with. So definitely understand you there, but the good thing is you have a lot of opportunities like Zoom where you can get together with old friends and maybe try to make a different type of environment for that setting. It might help you feel a little bit more like you're able to connect with them in a place that's maybe not exactly where you are.
Hi, may I also answer Sophie's question, please? Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, I think in my perspective, the fact that we aren't seeing like our families. Yeah, I know maybe there is 2 or 3 here, but there isn't all of them. And there is like a disease here and it's dangerous outside, and we are afraid of what stuff can happen for the most of the people that they're outside like working and not having like the support of the people that can give them. So maybe that's the problem, that's the most obstacle like we are facing. So maybe it's that.
I think that that's something that's really unique about this. When we went into the dome, we didn't have, you know, this kind of atmosphere of fear around, that anyone could get sick, that people we know could, you know, be really horribly affected by this. It was mostly a choice we made for ourselves. And we kind of like to joke that our lives changed 98%, and all of the people that we didn't immediately live with, their lives changed 2% by us going into the dome. You know, for all of us now, there's a lot more fear and there's a lot more concern. And there's a lot of thoughts around people who have to go to work, people who can't go to work, people who want to go to work, and basically everyone's trying to stay safe and trying to stay sane. And it's really hard dealing with that. And I think that, I mean, I know that I'm dealing with that too. So unfortunately, I can't give you any help on that from the dome, but you're not alone. I definitely feel that concern too, and the pressure to try to be the best neighbor I can and be the best community member that I can for the people around me.
Mm-hmm. It's a challenge because it's like, it's strange living up here because like when this started and the travel restrictions started, a lot of people went home. A lot of Southerners, like I live in Iqaluit in Nunavut right now, and a lot of Southerners went home or tried to go home back to the south to be closer to family. And I was like I know you want to, but at the same time, I was like, I would be, if I did something to like make my mom sick, I was like, that's the worst thing I can imagine doing. So even though like you want to do something, it's like you have to like, no, the best thing I can do right now is just stay put and do my part to keep everyone around me safe. So it's hard, but yeah. Anyway, Paulina, I unmuted you so that you can ask your question, I think.
Hi, hello. First of all, I want to congratulate you because I've been listening, and I think it's very interesting what you have done. But I have a question. I don't know if it's relevant or not. But what do you think about the life in Mars? I mean, perhaps it could be bacteria or virus. What are your thoughts about that?
Like it's I'll say that, so one of the good things about isolation, I'm gonna say, we didn't get sick for 8 months because we didn't see any other people. And I was like I remember a bit like at the end of the mission being like, wow, that was incredible, like other people are the worst. Like, so I'd never been so healthy for such a long period of my entire life. So yeah, enjoy not catching a cold while you're in isolation. In terms of like weird bacteria on Mars, and if we could like develop maybe new viruses and then bring them back to Earth or get sick, I don't know, I suppose it's a possibility. But right now, I don't think no one's ever found one on Mars. So I'd say the risk is low. It's more a risk of us contaminating Mars than Mars contaminating us.
All right. And do you, well, there's going to be some missions to Mars in order to find life, I guess, no?
Yeah, there's a couple going on now. I think most of the probes that we've sent to Mars and most of the rovers, part of their basic mission is to search for signs of life, which is why when they saw differences in the terrain in certain places that looked like there had been water geysers that had caused immediate erosion, those get a lot of attention because water is kind of the basis of life, at least here on Earth. And so anything that shows us that there was water or could possibly still be water, all of that is kind of what these, like the Mars Curiosity rover and Spirit and Opportunity, they were all looking for signs of water and looking for signs of life, and hopefully trying to gather enough evidence to at least put together a working theory on what could be down there. in addition to a lot of other scientific data that they brought back.
All right. All right. And in order to, you say water, do you think the water in Mars could be usable for humans?
If there is water on Mars, it would definitely be useful for humans. That's one of the heaviest things that humans have to bring with them anywhere that they travel in space is water, because we need so much of it, and it's useful for everything. So even our rocket fuel, when it is combined, it makes water. It's, you know, liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen. So it would definitely be useful if there was. But as of now, there's no large quantities that we've been able to find.
All right, all right. Thank you. Congratulations once again.
Oh, thanks.
I have a question, please.
Yes, Stephanie.
Hello, my name is Stefania. Such a pleasure to meet you, and what you did is so amazing. What I want to ask you is that, was this project open to the public? And the second question is that, what are the abilities do I have to accomplish to participate in one of these projects if I could?
So our project was 2014 to 2015. It was open to the public and also open internationally. So there was, you know, you didn't have to be a US citizen. I believe the qualifications were a bachelor's degree in a natural science. No, I don't think that was even a qualification. A bachelor's degree of some kind, and then a research project that would be relevant to the situation. So like Martha's gardening, Jocelyn did a stress analysis of people. Zach did a project with 3D printing and its usability, things like that. So I think that was kind of it.
Yeah, and then there was like the aptitude test in the Knowles, the 6-day camping course. So in terms of academics, yeah, getting like a bachelor degree in some kind of technical field. But then what will help you get through the rest is having some kind of like teamwork or leadership experience, you know, baseline physical health, because those are going to be important too. They're not the, you know, requirement on the application per se, but, you know, they'll be tested. So it'll be important.
Okay. Was there any restriction physically? I mean, can any person who has any disability could participate in this program?
Yeah, like I think it depends on what the disability is. But like one interesting thing is like they've always been trying to get someone over 65 involved in this, because there is a thinking that the mission to Mars is going to be so physically challenging on your body, it's going to cut your life a bit short compared to normally. So they've always tried to get someone older on the mission, and so we did have a fellow over 65 on our Knowles course, but he did find it a challenge to keep up, and he wasn't selected for the final mission in the end. I'm not sure, you know, what extent he also snored, so, which was, we did have a small amount of input into how, you know, who we wanted on the crew. And I think that was a deal breaker for a number of people who were on the camping trip. So again, I'm not sure whether it was his physical limitations or the snoring that came to bite him in the end. But yeah.
I think in terms of physical disability, you kind of saw the image of where we were. So walking around outside was really difficult, and each and every one of us had EVA chores to do. EVAs are where we would put on the big suit and go outside. So I do think that would be a limitation if someone had a mobility disability. But
that said, I have had a knee reconstruction. Now I've had 2 knee reconstructions. I tore my ACL playing soccer, both of them now. And that is not, having that past injury has not affected whether or not I can walk or run. So I was still able to apply for the mission. I was still able actually to make it quite far in the Canadian astronaut selection. Sophie's celiac, right? So, but that doesn't, you know, you change your food, it's not a big deal. So it depends, as long as you can physically perform the tasks. It depends, like it's very, you know, it really depends on the disability, but I wouldn't write yourself out. I would still apply and just see, you know, see what happens.
Yeah. Unfortunately for me, I have to go to work since I am at work right now.
So do I actually, but this has been super.
We would like to thank you so much for your time. We know you have to go to work right now, and we really, really appreciate Drs. Martha and Sophie. We really, really appreciate your time, your insights, and all the learning that you shared with us. Sophie, you said you are trying to be a good neighbor and a good citizen. I know you have always been that, and Martha as well. And with this conference is the kind of things that you do to help others. And I invite all of us to do this kind of things, give something to our neighbors, to our family members. Either it can be via Zoom, like today. And well, of course, you know, the University of Celaya always welcomes you and is very happy to listen to you. So thank you very much. Maybe if you could all turn on your cameras and say goodbye. Si quieren prender sus cámaras para que nos despidamos de nuestro. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, well, be safe, everyone, and have a good rest of your week.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Have a good one.